Hello. In this video, I want to introduce you to Git. Git is a version control system that's used in a lot of the software world. And as we begin, I want to look at exactly why it's used so much. So first of all, this screenshot at the top of the slide showing in front of you comes off of the gitscm.com website, which is the home for the open source code of Git itself. And it's the home to the actual tools for using Git. This home is maintained by a large consortium of companies interested in making Git as effective as possible. Now, as it says here, it's free and open source, and it's a distributed version control system. So that's actually very important. You'll notice down below, too, that they say it outclasses different control systems from including Subversion, CVS, Perforce, ClearCase. And that's a little hard to understand if you haven't used version control systems before. So, what is it actually? When you're working with a team and you've got a bunch of different pieces of code that you're trying to improve inside of a system or for a server, you and another worker might be working on the same thing at the same time, or something associated with the same thing at the same time. There have been big problems historically for companies when they didn't know who was working on what, and then things would break. I am absolutely sure you have had software crash on you. Maybe your whole computer has crashed before. Maybe you've had an app in your iPhone or your Android phone crash and all of a sudden just quit on you. Those things happen because the software is not perfect. Some sort of bug is happening inside, and those bugs are happening due to the coding itself. The coding gets mixed up. When one person writes one thing, nobody tests it, it gets into the final source code, and then it gets deployed all the way into the product. We want to avoid that. Well, what Git does is it tracks who made what changes and when, and then it also allows the resolution of two people working on the same thing at the same time. That way, if one person decided the code needed to be written one way in order to fix a certain bug, and then submitted it, but another person submits it later, that one that submits it later gets flagged and says, oh, there's actually something else going on here that I need to be aware of. And then they know to resolve that conflict, and it could even be in the same exact line of code inside of a specific text file. So that's been a huge value in industry. To get a little taste of Git, we're going to be doing a bunch of Git in our class so that you become more comfortable with it, but you can go on to Code School and take their Try Git course. You can see it referenced here off of the gitscm.com site. It's something optional if you're interested. All right, let's dig a little deeper into what Git is. You can see here, let's take our case. We're mostly dealing with PHP. Git allows you to manage code on your own machine and with a remote server. So to begin with, let's assume we've got some code that we're writing for a website and we're using PHP language. Whatever we're writing is in our Git working directory. And then as we get confident that our code is ready, we would run a command called git add. And as soon as we run that git add command, Git takes a picture of our code as it is at that moment in the working directory and moves that picture into the staging area. Now, in some companies or in some systems, and you can do this even on your own machine, the code would instantly get tested in the staging area to see whether it meets certain requirements, whether it has any errors in terms of line endings or other kinds of problems. And it would tell you if it does, and then you could fix it and send it back to the staging area. After we've built up a fair amount in the staging area, let's say we think we've finished writing a certain function, we go ahead and we would run a git commit statement. And the git commit statement would have a little comment on it that says, okay, we finished writing this function. And we'd name it. And that moves the code from our staging area, takes a picture of it, and actually moves it over into the repository. And the repository is code that we think we're ready to actually send to the remote web server, or if it weren't a web example, it would be an application server or some other remote host. It could even be just a code archive like GitHub. And then later, once we've gotten enough in the repository, let's say we were working on a whole batch of different functions and we've got them all, then we'd run a git push, and that would push our code from the repository to the remote server. This works in both directions, so we can actually pull the code from the remote server down into our repository and staging area and working directory. All right, so that's the basic overview. Let's get into how you set up Git, and we're going to go through how to do it on Windows and how to do it on a Mac. And in each case, you're going to Git, that's kind of funny, Git, and then you're going to set it up to work with the shell with a text editor. All right, here we go. So on Windows, you're going to go to this URL, http://git-scm.com. You're going to download the latest version, and what it's going to install is something called Git Bash. As you're installing it, I want you to check two options, at least. I mean, you can install the desktop icon if you want, but you should set it up to use Git from the Windows command prompt. You see that in the picture here. And then also on the next screen, check out as is. Commit Unix style line endings. That's going to save you some headache. All right, so go ahead and do that. Once you do that, you can open Git Bash to make sure it's working. Okay, let's assume you've done that. Now what we're going to do, inside of the terminal, the shell, where Git Bash exists, the text editor is not very friendly. And so we're going to add a code knowledgeable text editor to your system. In this case, we're going to use Notepad++. It is a robust and free text editor that's used by a large part of the coding community. Make sure you get it from this URL, http://notepad+++ spelled out .org. There are a number of, spammy versions of Notepad++ out there on other sites. So you want to make sure you get it from this URL. Go ahead and install it. Open it to make sure it opens, then close it. And now follow these next directions to set it up as usable from the Git command line. So step A, we're going to need to get the path to your executable. By default, it's probably in your C drive, Program Files, x86, Notepad++. Double check, make sure that's true. See the screenshot here, I have it on the right. Navigate to Notepad++ executable and click up in the search bar of that window, and it will convert to the path to the executable. So just make sure that's still true. Then move to step B. And notice, by the way, in step A that Notepad++, the executable itself in the screenshot here, actually has a lowercase n in the name. Okay, when you move to step B, Now you're going to go into your Start menu, go to the Computer button, and right-click on it and select Properties. Down at Step C, when the System Properties window opens, you go to the Advanced tab and go to the bottom and click on Environment Variables. So every operating system has environment variables, and in particular, there's a path variable. So you scroll down to the path variable and select it, and then click Edit over here in Step D. And what we're going to do is this path variable tells the operating system all of the locations where there are specific executables that are allowable to be run. And we want to, by the command line, we want to specifically allow Notepad here. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to hit Edit on the path variable. Don't delete what's in the path variable. Scroll out to the very end of the path variable, type a semicolon, and then paste the path to the Notepad++ executable. Go ahead and click OK, save everything, close the windows you had open, and now you should be able to go to your Start menu. In the search box where it says Search Programs and Files, type CMD. That will open up your command line. And then you can just type a lowercase Notepad++, and Notepad++ will open if you set it up correctly. Now for the Git connection, we need to do one more thing. We're going to go into Git Bash and type the command listed right in front of you. Git config -- global space core.editor quotes notepad++.exe dash multi-inst with a capital I on the inst dash no session. And that creates a Git config file that's like a preferences file for Git, and it takes the environment variable for Notepad++ and says that is our text editor. So that when we're editing text, it's going to open Notepad and let us use it if we want to. Now you can check and see if this is done correctly by immediately after you do that typing Notepad++ space .gitconfig. That's the name of that preferences file. And inside of that file you should see this line that I have showing on the screen in front of you. Once you've done all that, you can close everything and you are good to go. Alright, on the Mac side, it's a little different. So this time we're going to open the Terminal app. Now if you haven't ever opened the Terminal app, it's in your Applications folders, Utilities folder, and it is a complete bash shell. We'll learn a little bit about the bash shell in class, but just know that it's a bash shell. Another way you can get to things on a Mac, if you have it turned on in the Finder preferences, is by clicking Command space, and that will open up your search bar for the system. Then you can just type Terminal and hit Return, and it'll open the Terminal app. The Terminal app, I have a picture of it up here on the right, and you can see it has my name and it says -bash. I typed in whgit, and when you type that command, it actually finds the code command for Git. And then I typed git status. Now, if you don't have Git on your machine yet, one or the other of those commands is going to prompt your operating system to show this other dialog box down below. And it'll say the git command requires command line developer tools if you haven't already installed Xcode or the tools. You can install either one. I like to install Xcode because I like to be able to write code for mobile apps, and Xcode allows me to do that. It's free, but you can also just install the command line tools. They're both free. Once you've installed them both, go back to the terminal, run git status or whgit or both, and that will confirm that you have it installed. Okay, similar to Windows, we're going to install an enhanced text editor for writing our updates and comments in Git, and we're going to use a free one that is pretty good and is widely used, and it's called Textmate 2. It's a beta software. They say it's a beta, but in fact, it's very robust and stable. Make sure you get it from this URL, macromates.com. And when you download the archive, it's a tarball archive, you double click on it, it'll open it up. You'll get the little flower symbol app, and you got to drag that to your applications folder. After you've done that, it's installed. Go ahead and open it, make sure it's working. Once you're in it, open the Preferences in Textmate, and in the Preferences dialog box, go over to the Terminal setting and click Install to install shell support. So the shell is the bash shell. Notice? And once you've installed it, you should see the shell support not installed message here on the screenshot should turn green, and it should say, shell support installed. That takes care of one piece. The other thing we've got to do is right in front of us here. It tells us we need to add this mate shell command to our bash resource file, which we'll have to actually create. So here's how we do that. We're going to go back. Go ahead and close Textmate. Go back to the terminal and type mate. Textmate should open. And then close Textmate again. Back in the terminal again. Type mate space .bash rc. When you type the name of the text editor with the next thing is the file name, if that file didn't exist already, it creates the file automatically. If the file did exist, then it just opens it up for editing. So in this case, it probably didn't exist on your machine, and so it's going to create it. Now, you have to do this in your home file of your user. That's true on the Windows machine too. By default, the terminal is going to open, or the command line on Windows will open into your home for your user account on the machine. That should be fine. I just wanted to note that in case we run into any problems. So you create the bash resource file, and then you just add the line that they told you to add. So there you can see it, you save it, you close it, and you should be good to go. That's it. You've now set up Git on your computer, and your code editor environment is configured to work with it. You're ready to start the Git exercises.